a previous video, I showed you this spreadsheet and showed you how it works, how you would use it once you already have it set up. What I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to show you how to set up the spreadsheet. And we're going to start by just imagining we have a person who's not making much money. Let's say that after their tax deductions, they're making $10,000 a year. And my typical audience is it's college students, and so I imagine that's a pretty fair number for your typical college student who's working a part-time job and just trying to eke by life. So the way this works is the first $9,525 that this individual makes, they're going to pay 10% of that tax. So this individual is going to make about $475 more than that. And on that $475 extra, they're going to pay a 12% tax. In order to set this up, we have to do a thing called an if-then statement. And in fact, it's going to be a really complicated if-then statement. It is a nested if-then statement. And a quick disclaimer before I start typing this in. I built this if-then statement through a very complicated trial and error process. I didn't just sit down at my computer and know how to do it. I sat down at my computer and I typed an if-then statement, and it was wrong. And then I changed it, and it was wrong again. And then I changed it again, and it was still wrong. It probably took me, spread out over 3 or 4 afternoons as I had chances to get to it, anywhere between 4 to 6 hours to figure out how to do this. And that's a thing to kind of consider. When you're doing something very complicated, it can take a lot of time to first learn how. Now that I've done it, I can knock it out pretty quickly now that I've kind of done that trial and error part. And I tell you that so that you don't ever get discouraged if you've got to sit down in front of a spreadsheet and figure something out. And that's kind of one of those rough things about this world we live in. If you do a really good job of figuring out something new and someone else does a crappy job or just copies what someone else did, they're going to look like they did a better job than you did. But that doesn't mean they actually know more or have more skills than you do. They just produce more than you did. And that's a frustrating reality of the world that we live in. We're going to go through this now because I want to show you how to do it. And with a little bit of luck and work, maybe you'll be able to do this much more smooth than I am. So the first thing we're going to do is type an equal sign. And what we're going to do then is click on our 10% tax rate because we know we have to multiply something by 10. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lock in the A on this one with my absolute cell reference so that I can drag over to the married filing jointly and do that one later. Now I'm going to multiply that 10% by typing an asterisk and mistyping a bunch of stuff and deleting it. That happens by an if statement. So I'm going to type if and then open parentheses. And you can read what it says on the screen. It says if logical test, comma, value if true, value if false. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the spreadsheet a logical test. And depending on what happens in that logical test, it's going to say this test is true or this test is false. And then it will return whatever I put in the value if true, value if false. So the logical test is going to be equal to B7, which is the 9525, the upper range of the tax bracket I'm currently interested in, is less than E5. And so E5 is the dollar amount in my taxable income cell. And I'm going to use the F4 key to get some dollar signs there so that if I drag down, I'm always going to point to row 5. So if the tax bracket that I'm in is less than my current taxable income, my income after deductions, if cell B7, the upper bound of my tax bracket, is less than the amount of money I make, then it's going to do a thing. So if that is true, we're going to take the number that our tax bracket is in, B7, and then subtract the number right above our tax bracket, B6. So if it's true, I love how it's color-coded, we're going to take the 9525 and subtract a 0 from it. And as this drags down, this is always going to be if our income is more than the tax bracket I'm looking at in this row, we're always going to subtract these two numbers and in essence get the difference between the range multiplied by 10%. Now we need a value if false. If that does not turn out to be true, then we're going to do our taxable income, and we're going to hit F4 a couple of times to get a dollar sign in front of the 5, minus our current tax bracket. Well, actually the number right above our current tax bracket. And then we're going to close that parentheses, and that's going to give us our if-then statement. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to multiply our current tax bracket over in cell A7, in this case 10%, by this if-then statement. And so we start the if-then statement by saying, if our current tax bracket over here in cell B7 is less than the amount of money we make, then we're going to subtract B7 minus B6 to get the amount of our taxable income inside of that bracket. If it's not true, we're going to subtract our taxable income from the lower bound of our tax bracket. So we're going to hit enter and see what happens. So we got it, right? We got our 10% for our very first tax bracket. And if it's right, I should be able to drag down and get everything I need. So I'm going to drag down one more time. And if you were to do the math, you would find that 12% of the $475 difference between $10,000 and $95.25 is going to be, $57. Let's drag down one more time. Uh-oh, we got a big negative number, right? So what we have now is a spreadsheet that works just fine if we stop where we know our tax bracket stops. But that's not quite good enough. Now what we have to do is set this formula up so that if this number right here is going to be negative, it will return a 0. In other words, what basically has happened is there's no way to account for this $82,500 tax bracket that this individual is not in. And so now what we have to do is set it up so that if I drag down, I won't get these negative numbers and mess up my table. Now, if you wanted to just stop here and do it like this and only drag down as far as you needed to for your own purposes, you could. But I want to take things up to the next level. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create what I like to call a nested if-then statement. What do I mean by that? I mean I'm going to put two if-then statements with one if-then statement inside of another one. So I'm going to move my cursor in front of the first if-then statement. And I'm going to start another if-then statement. So I'm going to type if, open parentheses. And now I need a logical test. In this case, my logical test is going to be if my taxable income is less than the tax bracket below mine, the lower bound on my tax bracket, comma, I'm going to enter a then statement. So basically, if my taxable income is less than the lower bound, I want it to return a 0. And then a comma, and then otherwise finish the if-then statement. Now I just need to put a closing parentheses behind this and hit enter. And if I've done this right, I should be able to drag this down and it'll enter zeros wherever I don't have a taxable income. So let me just make some quick adjustments to this. Let me drag this over so that it also works with the married filing jointly. And let me add my line back in because I cleared out my line when I dragged everything down. And show you what else I did. Now, to get my total tax, I just simply used the sum feature to sum up all my potential tax amounts. And that's a pretty straightforward thing to do. And my average tax rate is just going to be my actual tax I paid, my $1,009.50, divided by my $10,000. And so what we see happening here is that this individual who makes just a hair over the 10% tax bracket is going to net pay 10.1% in taxes. And if this individual got married to someone making the exact same amount of money, they would be in a similar situation. Okay, I think I may have an error somewhere. Let's see if I can figure out what it is. Okay, yeah, see my error. This pink right here should be up here where this red is. I have something that's not dragging down properly. So let me find it. It's got to be, it's this right here. This should be, there should be a $sign in front of this right here. So we'll put a $sign in front of that and hit enter. And let me see if I can figure out why it didn't work here. There should be a $sign in front of here as well. So it's always pointing to E5 in this case. Let me try that again. There we go. Now it's working. Okay, so trial and error. It never worked perfectly the first time, and it's perfectly normal for mistakes to pop up, and you have to go in and try to fix them. So that is how I built my income tax table. And here's what's interesting about this. Let's say next year the tax laws change, because the tax laws change constantly. These rates can change. They just changed recently. These can change here. They can change at any time. All you got to do now is go in and update these numbers here in this table. And once you have those updated numbers, you can quite easily recreate this by plugging in whatever number your income tax is. Well, this video's gone a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. And I hope that you were able to follow how I did this and that it makes some good sense. So thank you very much for watching.